those are just kind of like stories that I sort of gravitated towards. Just things that kind of like acknowledge that there is darkness in the world, but also that good can overcome it. My name's Michelle Hunt, and I am a watercolor illustrator.
How would you describe the work of Michelle Hunt?
There's a romance to it. There's something very soft and tender and romantic about the art that I make, and I always have really loved that about it.
How did you develop a love and a talent with the watercolor?
When I was growing up,
In the UP.
In the UP.
Yeah, there's my visual.
In the UP, I lived on a cute little one-story house on the lake my first few years of life, and our next door neighbor was a watercolor artist. And he was painting airplanes and cars, but I loved getting to go to his studio and seeing all of his tools and his paints and his palettes and everything like that. My parents got me my first set of watercolors when I was like in middle school, and they were a really, really crappy set of paints, and I hated them so much that I kind of wrote watercolor off, and I was like, nope, not doing that, kind of hated it. Then when I was in high school, I did an art project with watercolors that were much higher quality and realized that I actually really, really loved them. I love the transparency of them. I love the glow that you can get with watercolors. I love how eco-friendly they are and how like compact they can be. You really just need like paint, paper, and brushes, and you're kind of good to go. I've got this autumn prints that I'm working on right now. I always love autumn. It's my favorite time of year, and I always like to have a few pieces sort of new for the seasons. So I'm going to be using some sepia permanent ink pens to start inking this piece. I've already started it, but I'm going to continue inking it a little bit so that you can see a little bit of the inking process, and we'll kind of start with that one. I love inking my pieces. I'd say that's probably my favorite part, actually, just because it's very therapeutic. I'm really just focusing on my breathing and focusing on drawing lines and just drawing with like such intention that I really, really get lost in that process. And I do always ink before I paint, just so my lines don't get lost once I start painting. I'm really, really deeply inspired by like Art Nouveau movements and pre-Raphaelite artists, and something that they always did really, really well was like really gorgeous like organic lines and really beautiful costumes, and like hair and hands and fabric are things that I just really love painting because I like the challenge. And so I've always really gravitated towards those styles that are very romantic and very, very soft and ethereal and feminine and magical in their own sort of way. And for me, it is just sort of storytelling, sort of focusing on characters that I know and love, whether they be my own original characters. I've been playing a Dungeons and Dragons game with some friends for about 8 years off and on. So it's been an ongoing kind of collaborative storytelling effort between myself and some friends of ours. I also just really, really love mythology and legends and folklore. So that has inspired not only our own storytelling, but also my art and the characters that I portray. I feel like those are just kind of like stories that I sort of gravitated towards. Like I've always really loved like a good gothic romance. I've always really loved like Lord of the Rings and like fantasy and sort of like dark fantasy, just things that kind of like acknowledge that there is darkness in the world, but also that like good can kind of overcome it. So it's always just kind of been something around. A little sheep girl. This one is actually kind of the opposite. I wanted to do some spring things. I have a booth at the Grand Rapids Comic-Con in November, and so this one's actually going to be an exclusive print that will be available at the con. The cons are always really fun to go to, but I really love getting to show my art in a more gallery setting, which is a little bit trickier to find, but I think it's just as important, because I believe getting to see titles and descriptions and For me, getting to do the write-ups of my pieces just adds so much value that you don't always get to see when I just have a booth that's just stuffed with as much art as I can sort of fill it with. So I use a variety of paints when I'm working on these types of pieces. My personal favorites are, they're called granulating paints. So they are paints that sort of create their own texture. It's pretty obvious in the blue in the sky on this piece. It almost has sort of like a sediment sort of texture to it. And I really, really like using them because it just adds some visual interest without me having to do a whole lot extra. And I always just get so much joy out of seeing the paints sort of do their own thing and how they sort of react when I just sort of step back and let them sort of move and settle in their own way. When I'm working with watercolors, I always try to work from light to dark. It's always easier to add more paint than it is to remove paint, especially when it comes to watercolors because of their transparency. So you can kind of see like the water playing with this paint and how it's kind of settling and separating and getting some of that cool texture in there. I just love it. It just makes me happy every time. I lost my job back in May, and I've been painting full-time since then. And so I'm always like kind of torn between like art is such a human thing that like we all should do on some level, like creativity in general, like whether it's singing or dancing or crocheting or painting or whatever it is. It's just such an innately human thing to do. And so doing it like as a career does feel weird some days. But it's also such a joy to do.
How does the culture of Kalamazoo affect your creativity?
I would say that it's been kind of nothing but positive for me. Getting to work specifically in the community studio that I am working in. I have about 6 other artists that work in this space as well. And I met my best friend here, and they have been like a huge influence on my work. Getting to work with other artists and seeing how they explore ideas has been really freeing. And in that process, it has really helped me grow so much. So I've grown a lot, not only as a person, but also as an artist, just getting to work around other people. It's been really incredible.
Tell us about Starlight Collective.
I got connected with them pretty quickly after I moved to Kalamazoo and started doing some of their small shows with them. And as soon as they had announced that they were doing a community studio, I jumped on that pretty immediately because having my own studio space is another dream of mine that I'd always wanted to accomplish. So yeah, they really just try and offer opportunities for working artists. And so they've done like music festivals, and they've done markets, and they've done some really cool like little pop-up shopping opportunities for people, and are just trying to really help like lift up other artists, which is really neat to see.
How do you create your next piece?
I have like a running list on my phone of subjects that I want to paint, and usually I will kind of have, it's sort of a combination of like finding a reference photo that's going to work for a thought that I have. So usually when those two mesh is when I'll be like, okay, now's the time to sort of create this piece.
And color is involved sometimes, and sometimes you're black and white?
Yep, I do some monochrome painting is what it's called. So I'll often do sort of like a grayscale black and white, or I'll just use like a single color. And my favorite is doing black and white with pops of gold because I really love the contrast is kind of my biggest thing. But I also just think it's a unique way to use watercolors. Getting to do a full illustration but in black and white or in like a monochrome scale is really fun.
And are you a solo artist that doesn't need music, or do you have a favorite style that sends you away into talent world?
I'm always listening to music and podcasts. I'm a huge fan of like Florence and the Machine and Hozier, so really kind of ethereal but really powerful music too is what really kind of moves me, and they've inspired a lot of my work and a lot of my pieces.
At what point in your life did you know that this would be the direction of your career?
Kind of always. No, my dream was always to get out of the UP and go to art school, and I got to go to Kendall College of Art and Design and graduated from there, and then my dream was to move across country, and I landed in Seattle for a while. And then a different dream brought me back here, and then my partner and I moved to Canada, and art was just always a part of that plan.
Do you still have that next dream? And what is it?
I feel like I'm always looking for the next one, the next dream. I am just coming off of having done my first solo show. So that was a huge dream of mine that I'm really proud of myself for accomplishing. And so now it's kind of just, yeah, what is that next thing? What's that next big thing for me?
Be sure to find us on YouTube and Instagram. Exclusive videos, extended content, and behind-the-scenes pictures. Just search Kalamazoo Lively Arts.